Installing Windows Server 2022 with the least amount of mouse clicks? I'm going to show you how.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hello and welcome to the Sysadmin Tutorials YouTube channel. As you guessed it, today we are going to be talking about Windows Server 2022 and installing an Active Directory domain controller. Now let's log into our server so I can show you how this is all going to work. Here I'm going to enter in my password for administrator. And up on screen we have a Windows 2022 server. It's just been installed. There's no IP addressing except for DHCP. No host name, no other features have been installed or anything like that. Now, how are we going to be installing this Active Directory domain controller? Some of you may have guessed this already, but we are going to be using Powershell. And this is a script that I've created that's going to go through and configure all the components needed to make this server an Active Directory domain controller. Now let's jump in and have a look at this script. To open the script, I'm going to use Windows PowerShell ISE. So I'm just going to click on the Start button here. I'm going to type ISE and we'll open up this first one here, Windows PowerShell ISE. I'll click on File, Open, and I've got my script saved in the Downloads directory. So I'll just click on that and click on Open. Now, don't worry about writing down or trying to copy the script for now. At the end of the video, I will show you where you can download this script for free. So let's just go through this and have a look to see how it's going to work. Now, the only thing in this script that you need to change is going to be this first section here from line 18 down to line 41. So these are the variables, and the variables can be changed to suit your network. Let's have a look at what the variables are. So the first one, we've got the IP address. The ETH IP address here is going to be the IP address that's going to be set on your server. So in my case, 192.168.1.222 is going to be the IP address of my Active Directory domain controller. The subnet mask is next, and that variable is ETH prefix length, and we set that at 24. 24 means a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. For other subnet masks, I will put that up on the screen here, and you can use that to suit your network. The next variable, we're looking at the default gateway for the server. So this is usually your router, and for my router, the IP address is 192.168.1.1. Next up, we put in our DNS server address. So this is an external DNS. For me, I'm just going to use Google, and I've put in there 8.8.8.8. And the global subnet, so this is going to be the Active Directory global subnet setting, and that is 192.168.1.0. For the global subnet, we tie that to a site in Sites and Services. The subnet location is going to be Sydney, and the site name is going to be Sydney-site. Next, we'll have our Active Directory domain name. So I'm going to be calling mine vlab.local. And next up, we've got our remote desktop variable. So do you want to enable remote desktop for your server or not? If you want to enable it, type yes. If you don't want to enable it, just type no. And the next variable, we have the IE enhanced security configuration. So you can see I've set that to yes, and that will disable the IE enhanced security configuration. If you want to keep it enabled, you can just type in there no. We then move on to the computer name, or the server name in this case. My server name is going to be called server DC1. And the last variables here we have is to configure your NTP servers. So you can see up on screen I'm using au.pool.ntp.org server addresses, and that's going to be configured into the Active Directory domain controller. Let's just scroll up a little bit on the script. Okay, next up we have our timestamp function. So every time it runs the timestamp function, it's going to update the date and the time as well in hours, minutes, and seconds. And we're going to use that for logging. And that brings us to the next section, which is the log file location. So we're just saving the log file in our documents directory, and we're calling it Windows 2022 AD deployment -log. We then move on to create the log file itself. And if it doesn't create or has some issue, it is going to break the script, as in stop the script, and just throw up an error saying that it could not create the log file. In which case you have to fix the issue and then rerun the script again. Now within the log file, we are going to be putting in line entries there for certain checks. And those checks are just to ensure that the previous section has run correctly. So if the previous sections run correctly, then the script will continue and move on to the next section and the next section and so on. So during this whole install, there's going to be 3 reboots. And when the reboot occurs, we are going to rerun the script again. The script's going to go through, run its checks against the log file, and then if it finds an entry file in the log file, it's going to then proceed with the script. Now you can see here we've got our first check. So it's going to check for a string looking for the pattern one basic server config complete. Now because this is the first time we're going to run this script, you're not going to see that in the log file. So therefore, with that if statement, if there is not the first check available, so if the first check variable is empty, then it's going to go through the next few lines of code. So looking at those lines of code, it's going to write to the host that the basic server config complete does not exist. And it's going to create a new timestamp and it's going to add that entry to the log file. Then we're going to move on to the basic server config, which is the first part of the script. Now the first part of the script, we're going to be setting the network, so the IP address, the subnet mask, the default gateway, and the DNS. Again, if any of those settings fail to apply, then the script is going to exit. It'll throw up an error message, and then you'll have to fix that error before you try to continue or rerun the script again. The second part here is setting RDP. So do you want RDP to be enabled or not? We set that in the variable before. So if that's set to yes, then it's going to enable RDP on this server. The next bit is disabling the IE enhanced security configuration. So if you selected yes to disable that in the section before, like where we set all the variables, then that is going to come through here. It's going to set the registry entries so that it does disable the IE enhanced security configuration for you. Once it's completed that, we're then going to set up the host name. So we're going to turn our server host name. My variable that I set before was server DC1. So it's going to set that as server DC1 with that entry there. We then write the script complete section to the log file. So you can see that the add content log file, the timestamp, and then it adds that entry of one basic server config complete starting script 2. That gets added to the log file and then it reboots. So we wait 30 seconds just to make sure you've got all your applications closed and you don't need to save any files or anything like that. And then it's going to reboot your server. Now upon the reboot, you're going to log back into your server again. You're going to come back into Windows PowerShell ISE and we're going to rerun the script. The script's going to go through and check your log file. It's going to see that it's completed that first section and then we're going to move on to this second section here. Now you can see that there's a variable called $secondcheck1. What that does is going to look in the log file to see if there is some text that contains one basic server config complete. If it does, then it's going to continue with the script and we're going to proceed with section number 2. So here we can see section number 2. It also checks in the log file. Does the log file contain to build Active Directory complete? If it doesn't, then it's going to continue with the script. And we are going to go through and the script is going to prompt you for the DSRM password, which is your Directory Services Recovery password. So that'll pop up with a little text box and you'll enter in your password there, which will be all secure because it'll just be hidden with asterisks. Then we move on and we install the Active Directory services. We then move on to configuring Active Directory domain services. So this is the actual install of Active Directory with your domain name, your Directory Services Recovery passwords, and things like that. Once that section is complete, you can see that we add another log file entry for to build Active Directory complete starting script 3. So that gets written to the log file, and then after that, your server is going to reboot again. So it'll wait 30 seconds, it'll reboot the server, and then we can log in and rerun the script again. When we rerun the script again, it checks to see if section 2 has completed. So it's only completed if it's written that log file entry into the log. And if it has, then what we do is we set up the DNS reverse records. So we set up the subnet reverse records in DNS. We then set DNS scavenging. We move on to create and configure Active Directory sites and services. with your global subnet. And then also we rename the Active Directory site from default first site name to the variable that we set earlier on in the beginning of this script, which for me was Sydney-site. Lastly here, we configure our Active Directory domain controller with the 2 NTP server addresses that we set in the variables at the beginning of this script. Once all that's finished, we are then going to write the log file that the script has finished and also display on screen with the write host command that the script has complete. Now, I hope that gives you a good understanding of how the script works. If there's any questions whatsoever, please put them in the comments below and I'll be able to help you out if you need help with understanding what certain commands are or things like that. Now, in this video, we're not going to dive into each component of Active Directory and explain what it does and how it works. I have done that previously on the Windows Server 2019 video. So if you need a little bit of help of understanding the Active Directory components, then please check that out. I'll put it in the link above. Watch that video. It'll explain everything in how we've set up Active Directory, what the components do and things like that. So now that we've gone through the script, let's run it and let's see how it all works. Now, remember at the top of the script here, we do have all of our variables. So make sure that's all entered in and configured for your network. And all we have to do is simply come in here and press the play button or the run script button. You can even press F5 to run it. Now the first bit of the script has completed successfully. So now there's a timer that's ticking in the background. It's going to wait 30 seconds and then it's going to reboot the server. Now, server's rebooting now. Okay, now that the server's rebooted, we are going to log in with our administrator username and password. And let's just jump back into PowerShell ISE. We'll have a look again at the script. Let's just verify our network settings. So to do that, we will go into command prompt and we'll just type in ipconfig/all. Now you can see the IP address, the subnet mask, default gateway, and the DNS servers have all been set correctly as per the script. I'll minimize the command prompt and then we'll go into Server Manager to have a look at RDP and the IE Enhanced Security configuration. On the left here, we've got the remote desktop is enabled, so that is correct. And then on the right hand side, we've got the enhanced security configuration has been turned off as per the script as well. The last bit for section number 1 was setting the host name. To check for the host name, we can simply come into the command prompt and type in hostname. Our hostname's been set to server DC1, which is correct. Now, one other thing I want to show you before continuing on with this script is in the documents section, we have our log file that the script is generating. So if I double click on that, we can see the timestamp entries here and what has been configured so far. Now, when I run the script again, this is going to be the second time. It's going to have a look in this log file and it's going to look for this line of text. So if that line of text exists, it then can continue with number 2 or with part number 2. So I'm going to close the log file. I'll close this window as well. And then we'll just simply come in here. We'll click on the play button again. And let's just watch the output down in the bottom here. So I'm going to click play now. Okay, so it's checked that log file. It's seen that that entry exists in the log file. And so it's moving on to section 2. If you remember when we had a look through the script file before, section number 2 did start with entering in the directory services restore password. So I'm going to enter in my restore password now and click OK. Now we're moving on to installing Active Directory. Now the script is going through the configuration of Active Directory. Okay, Active Directory has been installed and configured successfully. So now it's going to initiate that countdown timer of 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, it is going to initiate a reboot of the server. And that will complete the install of Active Directory domain controller services. Here we go, so the server is rebooting now. Okay, the server's rebooted, so we're going to log in once again with administrator, but on screen you notice that it does say vlab/administrator. So vlab is the Active Directory domain. So we're logging in as the administrator of the vlab domain here. This password is the same password as what you had on your administrator password from when it was just a standalone server. So we can use the same one there, and we'll just press enter. Now notice here on Server Manager that we have ADDS and we also have DNS installed. Now if I just go in to start and I type in Active Directory, and we'll go to users and computers. All right, we see here we've got our vlab.local domain and we've got our containers and folders underneath that. If I click on start and go into sites and services, you'll see here that we have our default first site name and we have nothing under subnets. So the next section, we're going to be configuring subnets. We're going to be changing this default first site name and we're going to be linking the subnet to the default first site name. If I just expand this out, you'll see that we have our server DC1 underneath default first site name. So I'm just going to close this window. I'm going to close the Active Directory window. I will minimize this one and we'll go back in once again to Windows PowerShell ISE. Now let's scroll down in the script to section number 3. And in section number 3, we're going to be adding the DNS reverse record and DNS scavenging. And then we're also going to be configuring Active Directory sites and services with that global subnet variable that we entered in earlier on in the script. For mine, it was 192.168.1.0. We're going to be renaming Active Directory site and then adding in the NTP servers. So before we do that actually, let's just go into DNS. And we've got our server DC1 here. If I expand out the forward lookup zone, you'll see here we've got vlab.local. If I go to the reverse lookup zone, you'll see here that we don't have any reverse lookup zone. So I'm going to close that now. We're going to rerun the script and then we're going to recheck everything after that. So we'll click the play button again. And sorry, I had the window minimized there, but if we just scroll up, you can see that we get a timestamp, so new timestamp entry. The log file exists and we've added in the subnet as a reverse DNS lookup in the DNS server. We've set all the scavenging and then we've also made the changes in Active Directory sites and services. Now after this one, there is no more reboot. So what we can do is just minimize the script. We can have a look in the log file entry. And you can see here we've got section 1, section 2, and section 3. And finally, the Active Directory script has complete. So we'll close that. Now let's go into sites and services. Okay, and we'll expand sites. This time when we expand subnets, you can see that we've got our subnet 192.168.1.0/24. And if I right click on that and I go to the properties, you can see that that subnet is linked to the site called Sydney-site, which is what the script renamed default first site to. Here we have the Sydney-site, and underneath that we've got our server DC1. Now I'll close that. We'll go into DNS. And if I expand reverse lookup zones, you'll see here we've got our reverse lookup zone now. If I right click on the server and I go to properties, and in the advanced tab, you can see that scavenging has been set to 7 days. And also if I do that on the forward and reverse lookups, you'll see that it's also set there for 7 days as well. So 7 and 7. And in reverse lookup, properties, aging, 7 and 7 as well. Now the last bit, we'll just check on the NTP server. So we're going to go into command prompt for this. And in here to check the NTP source servers have been configured correctly, we're going to type in here w32tm /query /configuration. And you can see right here in the middle, NTP servers is 0.au.pool.ntp.org and 1.au.pool.ntp.org as well. Now guys, let me know in the comments below if you want me to create another script similar to this one that will deploy a secondary Active Directory domain controller. With that, we can deploy that domain controller into this site, and therefore we can then have redundancy across our domain controllers. Now, as you can see with the scripting, it is super fast to deploy an Active Directory domain controller. And with this script, it's just the one script, as opposed to before when I did have those 3 scripts. We had to put in variables in 3 different areas and all this kind of thing. So we've just tidied this one up. We've made it much more easier to use and efficient. And as I promised, I am now going to show you where you can download this script, and you can change the variables. You can do what you want, use it in your labs, and yeah, then go from there. Now to download this script, I want you to head on over to my GitHub page, which you can go to github.com/sysadmin-tutorials. And then I want you to go ahead and click on repositories, and you'll see the repository here, Windows Server 2022 PowerShell AD install config. If you click on that, and then you click on the file here, which is the PowerShell script itself, you will have the whole script file here. So you can copy and paste the text file out, or you can download the file or do a git clone or something like that. Now that completes this tutorial on Windows Server 2022 and installing your Active Directory domain controller with PowerShell. I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions whatsoever, please put them in the comments below. And if you really enjoyed this video, I appreciate a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you again in the next video. Take care guys, and bye for now.